The activity that we're going to do today, an inventory of traits, is one of the first activities we do exploring the world of genetics and heredity. So we're going to take a look at your acquired traits. And acquired traits are observable characteristics that are passed on from parent to child. About 99.8% of your genetic makeup is the same as the other 6 billion people on Earth. We're going to look at that 2% that makes you special. Now, during this, there's a lot of debate about whether one or a combination of genes give you these observable traits. That's not what we're after. What we're after today is to see if you have them and if you are dominant or recessive. We're going to use a lot of our vocabulary today. So let's get into your inventory of traits for you as an individual. This chart that I'm looking at is the basis for our lab today. What you're going to do is you're going to go through all these different traits here. Oh, where are they at? All these different traits. There's a bunch of them there. And we're going to see if you have these traits and if you are dominant or recessive from them. Then I would also like you to get some family members. Find a family member, at least 2 family members, and go through this list with them and see if they have these traits, and you can tell them whether they are dominant or recessive from them. And if you do parents, you can see if you got that trait from a parent or not. But if you can also do an aunt or an uncle, a grandma, brother, sister. Just get some family involved in this. Heredity and genetics is about how things get passed down in families. So I want your families involved in this one. Another part of this activity is I'm going to be sending home some PTC paper, phenylthiocarbamide paper. That is the paper that 70% of humans can taste it and 30% can't. So you're going to get a chance to do a scientific test with family members at home. So the pieces of paper that are in the bag that I sent with you, you can tear those in half, and I would like you to test as many people as you can with it. Hopefully they're in your family, but maybe you don't have that many family members around and you want to do it with a couple of friends. You can do that as well. The point is I want to collect some data and see if that 70% holds up. So when I get your information, I'm going to collect it and tabulate it and see if the data holds up. Usually it does in class. We have about 70% all the time in all of the 6th grade when I do this with them. So enjoy testing out on your family members. As we go through our chart today, I'm going to show you what some of these traits are. That way you know what to look for. The first one that I see on a chart is attached or unattached earlobes. So an attached earlobe is connected directly on the head, whereas an unattached kind of has this little part that flaps there. That's unattached. So you're going to mark down whether you have attached or unattached. You're then going to write down if you have attached, that is a recessive trait. If it is unattached, it is going to be dominant. Here is the infamous tongue rolling one where there's controversy as to whether or not this is a genetic trait and whether or not it's controlled by one or more genes. For the sake of this lab, we're going to go ahead and see how many people can do some tongue rolling. 70% of people should be able to roll their tongue. I'm not one of those. I'm a 30%er. And I don't know if you can learn how to roll your tongue. I did read in an article that someone was able to train themselves to bend their tongue just a little bit. So whether genetics has a play in this, we're not sure. But rolling your tongue is dominant. Not being able to roll your tongue is recessive. Go ahead and mark your answers down. Next on our chart is dimples or no dimples. Dimples can be on both cheeks. They can be on just one cheek, like this one right here. Or you may not have dimples at all. We're not talking about laugh lines or wrinkles. We're talking about the dimples that you see on this young lady right here. Dimples are supposed to be just one gene controlling this genetic trait. So Having dimples is a dominant trait. Not having dimples is a recessive trait. Mark down your answers as to whether or not you have dimples or not. Next up is whether or not you have freckles. Freckles is a dominant trait. Not having freckles is a recessive trait. You may only have freckles sometimes in the summertime when the melatonin in your skin soaks up the sun and your freckles come out. In that case, yes, you do have freckles. You may just have some right across the bridge of your nose. You may have them all over. If you have freckles, dominant. If you don't, recessive. Go ahead and mark your answers down. Next, we have curly hair versus straight hair. This is naturally occurring, not whether or not you slept with some braids in your hair and woke up and it's now curly. This is if your hair just was natural, no products in it, anything like that. You can see I have naturally curly hair. It curls all the time. If I grew a mullet out, it would be beautiful. So we have naturally curly hair. Even wavy would be considered curly hair, or nice and straight hair like this. It is reported that one gene is involved in this, but more recently, scientists believe that more than one gene is involved in whether or not curly hair or whether you have curly hair or straight hair. Curly hair is the dominant gene. Having straight hair is recessive. So mark down your answers as to whether you have dominant or recessive genes for curly or straight hair. Some people that have short hair, and maybe you've never grown your hair long enough to see, maybe ask a family member whether they think your hair is curly or not. Our next trait is hand clasping. So if you would take your hands and bring them together just like that, what thumb is over which? So it is reported that if your left thumb crosses over the top, that is the dominant trait, or if your right thumb crosses over the top, that is a recessive trait. And if you do this, whatever comes naturally, sometimes people don't have natural, it just goes either way. But for me, for example, when I do this, that's natural for me. My left goes over my right. If I switch that right now, there's something about it just doesn't feel right. So that is my natural way of doing that. That feels good. So I'm going to say that my left goes over my right, which is a dominant trait. Go ahead, clasp your hands and see which trait you are. This might be a new term for you, but widow's peak. A widow's peak is where the hairline comes to a little bit of a point right here, whereas a straight hairline, you don't see that. So if you pull your hair back, you can see on mine, yeah, I have that little point. That is what a widow's peak is. So having a widow's peak, having this little point coming here, that is a dominant trait. A straight hairline is a recessive trait. Hitchhiker's thumb is the next one that's up. Now, this one, if you hold your thumb up, like me right now, if you hold your thumb up and you're like, I don't know, does it bend backwards? If you have to guess that, the answer is no, you do not have it. People that have this recessive trait, their thumb really curves back, and it's not like they're pulling it back. As soon as they put their thumb up, boom, you get this. And in class, if we have a bunch of students and some can do it, it is noticeable. So if you put your thumb up and it just bends a little bit like the one right there, then you do not have hitchhiker's thumb. Not having it is dominant. Having a hitchhiker's thumb is a recessive trait. Mark your answers down. This is the PTC paper that I am sending home with you. So you're going to get multiple strips of this, and I would like you to test family members for part of this lab, but I also want you to do it yourself. So if you can taste the phenylthiocarbamide, PTC, you will taste a bitter taste to it. There's a reason why some people don't like vegetables like Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts contain this chemical inside them. So there are some vegetables that have PTC that cause that bitter taste and cause people not to like them. So you're going to test this out. If you can taste it, you will definitely know. I find in class that when we do this, 70% of our students tend to be able to taste it. If you can't taste it, it's simply going to taste just like paper in your mouth. So being a taster is a dominant trait. Not being able to taste it, that is a recessive trait. Eye color is a little bit more complicated as far as genes go. What we do know is that having brown colored eyes is more dominant over all the other eye colors. Now, there is dominance of between other eye colors like green and blue and which one's dominant there. In this case, we are saying, do you have brown eyes or do you have anything else? If you have brown eyes, that is going to be a dominant trait. Any other color, we will consider that in our lab right now as being a recessive trait. The next one, Darwin's tubercle, is one that I did not know anything about until I started teaching this unit. So Darwin's tubercle is named after Charles Darwin, who noted it in one of his books back in the 1800s. And he noticed that some people have this bump right here inside their ear. I can actually feel mine right there. This is a dominant trait. You will be able to see this quite easily if you have it. If you don't, you'll just have a smooth ear, like on the outside of this ear would be the same as on the inside. So Darwin's tubercle is a dominant trait. Not having it, a smooth ear, would be a recessive trait. All right, people, it's time to crack off those shoes and socks and take a look at our feet. This is what my feet currently look like right now. No, you don't want to see what my feet look like. It's pretty gross. So what we're looking at is this second toe right here. Is this second toe longer than the big toe? If that's the case for you, that is a dominant trait. But having a second toe be the same length or maybe even just a little shorter than the big toe, that's a recessive trait. So go ahead, people, get those shoes and socks off and take a look at some feet. And our last one that we're going to look at today is crossing your legs. And whether you're sitting in a chair and you bring your leg over the top of the other, or you simply cross your feet down at the bottom, what's the first way you would lay there and cross your legs, or sit there and cross your legs? That would be what's considered the most dominant. Crossing the right over the left is considered the dominant trait, whereas left over right is considered recessive. That is our inventory of traits activity. What I would like you to do is make sure that you mark down all of your answers and whether you are dominant or recessive. And then I want you to find 2 family members that you can reach out to and go through these traits with them. And I'd like you to be able to explain this to them, whether they are dominant or recessive for these traits, and think about where your traits came from your parents to you, and you will pass your traits on to offspring as well eventually. These traits make you up, make you unique. They were inherited. You had no choice but to get these traits. So embrace them. Embrace your traits. Please test some family members with the PTC paper. And then when you're all said and done with this, please submit this to me for your credit.